Hello you beautiful people, Aaron here, back with another video. So with the Alhaitham banner ending quite soon, we are going to be getting the upcoming Yelan and Hu Tao banner. I haven't talked about a banner in a long time. I think it's been over a year, and I think it's a good idea to get back on track with that. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about them, Yelan, Hu Tao, their weapon banner, the weapons on them, and all the 4 stars and whatnot too. I'm going to try and keep this video as short as possible, which means that I am going to do nothing but babble on and on for about 45 minutes. So I hope you enjoy. Before I hop into it, take a look at that subscribe button. See that button right there? Oh, it's red, right? Flashy. Okay, take it, put it in your mouth. Yeah. What do you think it tastes like? That's right. It's red velvet. For all those who didn't taste it at the start of this weird skit, go down below and take a bite out of that subscribe button for me, please, and taste some of that sweet red velvety goodness. Moving on, for all of these characters and whatnot, I will be using information from what I have heard, what I have experienced myself, and the like. Obviously, since Hu Tao is here, you know I'm not a big Hu Tao fan, but let's start with her. Hu Tao was and still is one of the best single damage dealing characters in the game. However, Hu Tao has some downsides, though they're not major, at least to some. Hu Tao requires a vape team to be usable, and therefore requires a Xingqiu for that usability. While this is a very strict requirement, she is pretty flexible otherwise, as she can work with Yelan, Sucrose, or Beidou in the other DPS buffing slot, along with Zhongli, Layla, Diona, Tankfei, or Toma as a defensive support. You can even use Amber in this slot, or Sucrose to swirl off of if you don't have any good pyro characters to work with. Another downside she has that's her main issue that might drive you away from her is her charged attack playstyle. Since she deals such insane damage through her charged attacks, she ends up eating a lot of stamina in order to deal damage. This can put you in a terrible situation where you need to dodge an attack but can't, so you die instead. It also feels terrible for when you need to get closer to an enemy but you're out of stamina, so you take your sweet time walking up to them, wasting the duration of buffs and the like. This is a huge turnoff for some, but it is completely fixed by her first constellation, also known as her best constellation, which allows her to freely use her charged attack and dash cancels with no worry. Another turnoff that not many people talk about for some reason is when the cryo aura is placed on her, as this will slow down all of her animations, which makes the muscle memory you have for her attacks useless, as you now need to relearn her timings, else you lose damage. It also slows down her sprint, which will have her consume even more stamina, making her C1 look even better. While others may disagree, from my personal experience, Hu Tao's first constellation seems mandatory to make her not feel like such a slog to play. Her stamina issues are the main reason why I benched her for Yaoyao, who is just worse but much more versatile and less annoying to use. There is also the fact that Pyro is now one of the worst elements in the game, all thanks to Dendro. So while the Pyro element might have been really strong in the past due to its insanely high damage ceiling with Vaporize, the usefulness of and our reliance on Pyro for damage has plummeted. The only Pyro characters that are actively used in Pyro Abyss are Bennett, Xiangling, Hu Tao, and Yaoyao, and of those, only Bennett and Xiangling are used over half of the time, while the rest are left to rot. So while Hu Tao might still output some crazy good damage, she's not as great as she was before, just due to how easy it is to reach similar damage numbers with other units, aka the casual Genshin power creep. Yelan is the exact opposite of Hu Tao. On release, she was debated as a luxury unit due to her similarities with the already overpowered Xingqiu. Her damage numbers were very similar to that of a C6 Xingqiu, but with offensive utility instead of defensive. She also did not have the same hydro application as Xingqiu, as he was able to apply hydro from his sword orbitals, while she needed her second constellation to compete. So while she was a good character, her hydro application was worse than Xingqiu's, which was bad for taser teams and vape teams. In the end, she only found a place specifically with Yaoyao alongside Xingqiu and in some freeze compositions, which she didn't really excel in. That's where Dendro comes into play, as this is where everything gets better for her. Yelan's viability as a character spiked with Dendro since Xingqiu is not better than her with it. This comes down to the characters that came out, as well as the impact of Quicken. With Nilo, Yelan was one of the only Hydro characters that could actually be paired with her, and she still is one of the best due to her percent damage buffing capabilities. Xingqiu, while still good, doesn't work as well with Nilo because his defensive utility was not useful due to the need of a healer, and neither was the Hydro resistance shred from his second constellation due to Dendro acting as the main source of damage. Not only that, but the extra AoE Hydro application due to the overabundance of AoE Hydro application in Nilo teams, making the extra single target application the only useful part. On top of that, Yelan's damage scales directly with HP percent, which is granted from Hydro Resonance, whereas Xingqiu's only HP scaling is his pitiful healing. Yelan also works better in Sino teams, which are mostly Quick Bloom focus. The issue with Xingqiu is that he has a bit too much Hydro application due to his Rain Sword orbitals, meaning that if close enough, a simple Quick Bloom team could instead turn into a Hyper Bloom team. Along with this, Xingqiu's defensive utility was not needed due to Dendro's impact on Kuki Shinobu. It became one of the best 4-star units in the game. Kuki Shinobu's ability to only scale with Elemental Mastery for both supportive and damage dealing capabilities is incredible, as it allows her to act as a major support and sub-DPS unit, which nullifies the usefulness of Xingqiu's utility. On the other hand, Yelan has slightly slower Hydra application, which allows for the Quicken Aura to stay on the target for more aggravates and threads to occur, at least without her C2. On this note, Yelan's Hydro application can still be too much before her second constellation, especially without Nahida and some very fast and strong Electro application from Sino's Constellation 1, Beidou's and Dori's Constellation 2, Lisa's and Kuki Shinobu's Constellation 4, and Fischl's Constellation 6. Without these specific sources of extra Electro application for Quick Bloom teams, you'll find better sources of slow Hydro application from Kokomi, Constellation 6 Candace, Mona, or even Barbara. Percent damage bonus buff is also incredibly good for aggravates to multiply off of, which makes her a better option in all Quick Bloom teams. This is the case with Nahida and Alhaitham too, as they benefit more from the percent damage Yelan offers for spreads and slower application of Hydro, since Nahida and Alhaitham can't use their Elemental Mastery for the Bloom damage reaction outside of Nilo teams. However, I want to take a moment to emphasize how her second constellation can be detrimental. Before, there was a major case to go for her second constellation for the extra damage and extra Hydro application, but realistically, that only offers her a large damage bonus and extra Hydro application. This is good specifically as a solo Hydro character with Hu Tao, but it is unnecessary or detrimental in every other situation. Her new best constellation is now her first, as it increases her total damage output by about the same amount as her second constellation, and it allows her to not have to use Favonius Sword, which is the worst part about Yelan. Her first constellation opens up so many other more damaging weapon options, while also acting as a great overworld traversal tool. If you are looking to get constellations on Yelan, her first is a must, but you might want to hold off on going any further. In the end, while she used to be just another and less versatile Xingqiu at lower constellations prior to Dendro, she has now blossomed and thrived in a role relatively unique to her at lower constellations. On the topic of Yelan versus Xingqiu, let's talk about him next, since he's also on the upcoming banners. Now, contrary to what I might have portrayed before in the Yelan chapter, Xingqiu is not a bad character. He is in fact the exact opposite, as he is incredibly good and valuable to any team, as having him in your character roster can be a major benefit to anyone without him. He has been one of the best units in the game for a long time, and it is still this way to this day. Though while Yelan may have power crept him in some spots, Xingqiu has shown that he is not going down without a fight. While Yelan may be better in the spots stated above, Xingqiu can also work in those areas extremely effectively. However, his defensive utility allows him to work better in even more spots. Xingqiu works best as an all-around unit for any Hydro reaction. Best spots are with Yelan, with Vaporized main DPS characters, with any variation of the national team, and when paired with Beidou and Fischl for Taser team. While transforming your on-field character into a one-person reactor, Xingqiu also provides the only source of grantable knockback and damage resistance in the game. This is incredibly important for those situations where you want to be a bit tankier, and or if you don't want to have your active character get knocked around a bunch. Characters like Sino, the Wanderer, Yoimiya, and Hu Tao benefit a lot from this type of defensive utility, as it allows them to run in shieldless and not get punished for doing so. Even with Dendro, he is seen tearing it up in both Hyper Bloom and Virgin teams. His insane defensive utility, plus his great damage output, plus his extraordinary Hydro application, makes Xingqiu a timeless classic that will almost always have a place in the game, no matter the situation. On to Beidou, who used to be by far one of the best Electro units in the game, with her issues being her heavy stat requirements and her limited viability. While her damage output is quite large, her energy issues made it mandatory to run her with Fischl, who could battery her effectively. Since Electro didn't have good reactions before Dendro other than Electro Charged, she was only ever seen with Fischl along with a Hydro applicator and an Animo character or Zhongli in Taser team. While this was limited, Electro was by far a very bad element before Dendro, making her one of the best of the worst. But after Dendro was released, Beidou got a major buff and usability in aggravate teams, which helped buff her damage by a mile while also making use of her major AoE Electro application. Despite this major buff, she is now one of the worst Electro units in the game. This is specifically because of the Hyper Bloom reaction, which is absurdly easy to build into while also leading to a monstrous damage output. The issue with Beidou is that she cannot utilize the reaction selection effectively, unlike most other Electro characters. So, while everyone else is building only Elemental Mastery and dealing thousands upon thousands of damage while also providing utility, Beidou is stuck with her previous build as her Elemental Burst cannot rock Hyper Plume. This means that she has to put so much more effort in to even think about reaching the same damage heights that a character like Lisa now can. That doesn't mean she's a particularly bad unit, it just means that she is one of the worst options you have for an Electro character, as she received very little buffs unlike the rest of the Electro cast, onto the worst 4-star on the banner. Ningguang has not much going for her. She is the main DPS in the oversaturated main DPS department and is one of the worst at it. She is also a Geo character, which is by far the worst element in the game, and inside that element, she is the only character who ever received a single buff, whereas the others received the Husk set and Goro, or are tied to a specific niche. She also happens to have the worst main DPS weapon type in the game, as it is used mostly for supportive units. This means that her weapon selection is minuscule, encompassing only 5, with no good free-to-play options. However, she does have very high starting base stats and guaranteed elemental damage, making her very strong as a starting character. But you get Noelle for free, who is just better and scales better to good weapon, team, and artifact options, all of which Ningguang doesn't have. Since she is Geo, nothing changed for her post-Syndrome. Instead, other elements got heavily amplified, making Wang look even worse by comparison. All around, she is by far one of the worst 4-star characters you can receive on a banner. Now onto the weapon banner, which is honestly, it's cracked. It's nutty. It's an insane weapon banner. However, there are better out there, and there will be better in the future. Wink wink, nudge nudge. You didn't hear that from me. Let's start with Aqua Simulacra. Aqua Simulacra is by far the best all-around DPS weapon for any bow user in the game. It has a massive crit damage stat, it has a great attack stat, it grants HP percent, so it's useful for those who want to scale with HP, and it has a decent percent damage bonus on the passive. This is the perfect all-around bow, similar to Jade Cutter, which does something similar. It is also Yelan's best personal damage bow. However, y'all might think I'm crazy for saying this, but I wouldn't recommend getting this bow. While it is very strong, most of the DPS bow characters utilize attack as their main way to deal damage. So for those characters that scale primarily with attack, you'll see a similar damage output from the Skyward Harp, which can be obtained from any weapon banner and the standard banner. My point is, Skyward Harp is going to lead to a similar damage output when compared to Aqua Simulacra, and it is much more easily obtainable. In general, Aqua is about 5.6% better for Ganyu, 0.2% better for Tartaglia in general, but in international, it's around 2.7% better, 7.3% better for Yoimiya, and 7.7% better for Tignari. For other characters, the damage difference is about the same as Tartaglia's, or it's just worse off. But for Yelan, well, it used to be her best in slot weapon, but now with her extreme viability in Dendro teams and her useful in Vaporized teams, her best in slot weapon at lower constellations turns out to be the Elegy of the End instead, due to its large attack percent and elemental mastery buffing. In most situations, the buffing that Elegy provides beats out the damage increase that Aqua grants her. The only times that Aqua is better is when Yelan is at higher constellations and when using Yelan in non-damaging reaction-focused teams, like Freeze or Mono Hydro. But in all the spots where she excels, and when at a reasonable constellation, Elegy is her best in-slot weapon. Now you may be thinking, oh god, this dude is going to try and convince me not to pull her Staff of Homa. And, well, I can try, but no, I'm going to try and convince you to pull this weapon, because this is by far the best polearm in the game with very few reasonable substitutes. Unlike with Aqua Simulacra, the next best generalist weapon you can get is the Primordial Jade-Winged Spear from the standard banner. However, unlike the Skyward Harp, not many polearm characters want Primordial Jade-Winged Spear. The only ones that would actually make use of it are Zhao, Raiden, Hu Tao, and Sino, because you need an on-field presence for this weapon's passive effect to function. This is the main separating factor between Homa and Simulacra, as Homa is the most versatile and strongest polearm by a mile. It can be used by supports, sub-DPS, and main DPS too, just like Simulacra and Skyward Harp, but unlike Aided Spear or even Staff of the Scarlet Sands. So no, this weapon is much more valuable than Simulacra, since it competes at the top spot for literally every polearm character with no clear, very good second all-around option here. But the Staff of Homa has always appeared along with another crazy good weapon. So if you don't like the Aqua Simulacra and want to wait for another weapon, then you most definitely can, as the weapon will most likely appear next time on another absolutely insane banner. Now onto the 4 stars for this weapon banner. Dragon's Bane is a very solid option and is Hu Tao's all-around staple for those without Homa. Getting this weapon on a banner is always a good thing as it can be used on quite a lot of different units. Other characters who use this weapon very well are Xiangling if you don't have the catch, along with Yaoyao and Hyperbloom Raiden, where this is their best weapon. It can also be used on Reverse Melt Rosaria, Virgin Toma, Driver Zhao, Hyperbloom, Sino, and Candice in a Nilo team. Then there's the rest, which is a very good bow for normal attack main DPS units like Yoimiya, Natalia, and Aloy. By far their best option in most scenarios and should be used on them if you have no other 5-star weapon. Even when compared to 5 stars, they can rival their power for these characters. So this weapon is a strong, though niche pickup. Next are the 2 Favonius weapons that appear on this banner. The Favonius weapons are by far the best set in the entire game. The fact that you can equip this weapon archetype on everyone on your team and then never have to worry about team consistency again is insane. The Favonius Sword is by far the most versatile of the other weapons in this archetype, slightly ahead of Favonius Lance. That being said, it is also by far the strongest and most worth it. If you try pulling for Homa but instead come away with 10 Favonius Swords instead, I would say you won the lottery. And remember, you don't need to refine these weapons for them to be good. Just build some crit and start smacking to funnel. On the opposite side of the spectrum, the Favonius Codex is by far the least used Favonius weapon out there. Only Lisa, Mona, and Nahida would ever want to use the weapon, and even of those 3, there are better weapons out there. It also has some intense competition for the support slot in Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayer, Hakushin Ring, Mappa Mare, and Wandering Evenstar. There's also the issue that not a lot of Catalyst users want to build into crit rate. So while this weapon is technically good, it is outpaced by others in the same weapon category. Last and certainly least is the Lithic Blade. This weapon is only good at Refinement 5 as well as in situations where you use a bunch of Leowick characters and where you want attack percent and crit rate. Only one candidate for this weapon in Chongyun for the national team or when paired with Zhongli and Auntie Shenhe. However, he has better options as do every other claim user. Okay, so it was actually 30 minutes that I babbled for. That was pretty close. Pretty concise too. If anything, I hope that my little analyses on the upcoming banners helps you decide what to pull for and where to invest your Primo Gems. That's really all I have to say. Tell me your thoughts on the banner and comment down below who you're going to be pulling for. Personally, I don't want to use Favonius on my Yelan anymore. I'm tired, but I also have no need for Homa. Anyway, if you do like this type of video, do click that like button and let me know, because the more that you like it, the more I'm willing to do it, especially since these videos aren't super hard to make. But with that, I will get out of your hair. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped out, at least to some degree, and I hope you all next time. Bye bye.